Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod with our Wisconsin pregame show sponsored by Fanduel Sportsbook. Your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch, whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line, find all the odds you need on the Fanduel app. Easy to download and you can get started right away. Head on over to vote on our Fanduel player of the game once it comes game time, obviously, for Wisconsin at slido.com, hashtag TFFINOTS. That's SLIDO.com. If you've not already done so, hit the like, subscribe, notification buttons if you're watching on YouTube, and be sure to keep recommending the show to your Spartan friends. We love to see the growth of the show and appreciate all the support. Remember to check out our support page at tffinots.com/support to get links to support the show and also get ad-free audio versions of the show if you sign up for a paid subscription on Patreon or Substack. Okay, Rod, Michigan State is still on life support for Big Ten title, although Michigan certainly sort of, is in the driver's seat, preparing to lap the field, but they have a couple number of hurdles to clear still. So the rest of the top of the Big Ten still has a shot, I suppose. Of course, just getting a double bye in the Big Ten tournament will be a challenge, considering there are 4 remaining teams besides Michigan vying for 3 spots. Michigan State has a tough road ahead with last 7, with 4 of those on the road, and all tough ones at Wisconsin, Indiana, Purdue, and Michigan. Probably the easiest one is probably Wisconsin, at least certainly by the metrics. Wisconsin's no joke. They just won in overtime at Champaign, and they currently possess the best pair of road wins, the Big Ten, surprisingly, with the wins at Illinois and Michigan. And this is a Badger team that like many years, there's not a whole lot expected of them. They're expected to be decent, a solid team, which is what they've been, but they're kind of, the metrics don't say so, and their non-conference schedule doesn't suggest it. But you look at them, they're 17-7 overall. They're 9-4 in the Big Ten. They're just, a game out of that sort of tier of double bye sort of, possibilities in the Big Ten, so top 4 spots. And so this is a team that has a lot to play for still. And, they sort of classic Wisconsin where they're just kind of in there, even though you sort of forget about them.
Yeah. It's a hard team to figure out because Wisconsin has, I would say to this point, arguably the best set of road wins, certainly in the Big Ten, maybe in the country. I'd have to look at it. When you consider that they've beaten Michigan and now, as of this week, Illinois on the road.
Yeah.
That's, something that you'd say, well, that's the resume of a, definitely a protected seed team, a top 4 seed line team, right? The problem with that is they've got some miserably horrible losses. Nebraska beat them by 30. You want to talk about Michigan State, for example. Michigan State's taken some losses. They were all very competitive. Not the case for Wisconsin. I know the Nebraska loss was...
They lost to USC at home. I know that was another one, which is kind of a crazy loss.
But I'm talking about even margins. Let me see here. BYU beat them by 28. Okay. So that's 2 losses by 28 or more. Purdue beat them by 16 in Madison. They lost a semi-home, which I believe was in Milwaukee, by 10 to Villanova. They lost on a neutral floor to TCU by 11. You getting the point?
Yeah, right.
Their losses. Now, granted, all of those came prior to New Year's, but they still count on the resume. So you could say, well, they're a better team since, they got back into Big Ten play. And that's true, but they did. I'm sorry, not all of them did. The Purdue loss by 16 at home came on January 3rd. But as you mentioned, they lost at home to USC. I mean, they've lost 2 home games this year. And then the controversial loss last weekend to Indiana at Indiana.
Yeah, right.
So it's a hard team to really get a grip on in some ways, in that their highs have been as high as anybody in the league. But they've had multiple, not just lows, but, catastrophic lows. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact, as we're going to go into, that their defense has been, to to say the least, very poor.
Yeah.
They are an uncharacteristically bad defensive team. I say uncharacteristically because usually in Wisconsin, we're not talking about, an Iowa under Fran or even an Ohio State of the last 5 years. They're currently 59th in KenPom. Last year, they were 24th.
Yeah, big difference.
Year before that, 46th. Year before that, 19th. Year before that, 34th. Year before that, 15th. And then we go pre-COVID, 17, 4. You got to go back to 2018 when they were a bad team, 15 and 18. And they were 66th in KenPom on defense. You got to go back that far to find a defense that was anywhere close to being or worse than this team has been defensively. And I will always believe this. When you can't check, it's hard to be a consistent team.
Yeah.
If you guard, you could still lose games, of course, but you're probably not going to be on a roller coaster ride when you guard consistently. And when you can't do that, then it comes down to, well, on a given day, can you just go outscore, outshoot, out execute somebody on the other end? And you could do that sometimes, but it's hard to find a level of consistency with that kind of team. And that's really what they've been.
Yeah. Well, and I think globally, we talked 3 years ago, maybe, about Greg Gard and sort of kind of shaky. There's a lot of sort of rumblings in Madison that I think we both feel the last 2 years that's been sort of put to bed. And also probably it helps him a little bit too. And I don't think this is a conscious decision on his part for why they're playing different, but they're playing differently as far as basketball. I mean, they're not the same plodding sort of Wisconsin type. And so they're more entertaining to watch. And, you can play any way you want. As long as you're winning, people are going to be okay with it. But I think their patience will get.
I'd be curious. I would be curious to see what the Wisconsin fan base's temperature is right now, because I haven't really dialed in on it lately. There definitely have been a few, I'd say at least 2 or 3 points where it seems serious that Greg Gard might be on the ropes. And I agree with you. I think last season they had a pretty strong year.
Yeah.
This year hasn't been as good as of yet, but as I mentioned, you have a couple wins, the quality of the ones they've got, you're probably not, and you go to the tournament, which they're going to do.
Yep.
Kind of hard to mount a firing campaign, right? But at the same time, it's also true that, and I'm a Greg Gard. I want to get this out of the way. I like Greg Gard. I think he's shown, as you mentioned, an ability to adjust, and yet I think he's also tried to keep at least some of the staples that have been there really since Dick Bennett, and then especially his mentor, Bo Ryan. Mm-hmm. And I think that's worth keeping. That's something to live up to. That's a lofty goal to have. But I also think it's unquestionable that the program is not in the same position that it was during Bo Ryan's tenure. Greg Gard has been, I would say, a good to very good coach, which if you're looking over even my lifespan of being a basketball fan is a pretty good place for Wisconsin to be.
Oh, yeah.
But because it comes in the immediate aftermath of the best sustained period in school history, it seems lesser. And it is. Right. It has not been as good. He hasn't had, but Bo used to get knocked for years for having great regular seasons, but not having it translate to the tournament, kind of like Gene Cady had that problem when he was at Purdue. But toward the end of Bo's tenure, he destroyed that because he had a couple Final Four runs. He had a team get to a national title game. He did enough to change ultimately that verdict.
Yeah.
Greg Gard, I got to look here to see what his longest run is.
I was going to say, has he made it to the second weekend? I think he did once.
Maybe once. Let me take a quick look. Didn't last year. I know that. He was out in the second round. Very tough loss to a good BYU team. Year before that, first round loser. Year before that, NIT. Right? Yeah, it was the NIT. So that doesn't count. Year before that, second round. So I'm back to 21 now. Yep, second round. 20, we didn't have a tournament. 19, first round loser to future Big Ten foe Oregon. Did not make the tournament in 18. And then in 17, okay, so his first year, I think that was his first year. Let me just be certain of that. No, it was his second year. He actually, 2 straight years, his first 2 years, he made it to the Sweet 16. 2016 and 2017. So since then, so we're coming up on a decade.
It would explain the angst that we felt.
Yeah.
Then you have a year that's a losing record.
And so that's that. And again, when that comes immediately after the guy who was by far the most successful coach in program history, and the guy who set you up, it would be as if, and it's an even stiffer situation than this, but it's as if Tom Izzo didn't have year 3 at Michigan State. Judd set him up to get that job, and the first 2 years were tough. Actually, the first 2 years were Greg Gard's 2 best.
Yeah.
But it's been rocky from the outside. I'm not sure that it's ever been rocky internally at Wisconsin. But you just wonder now, because I don't have a good feel for it. Where is the Wisconsin fan base? Have they kind of just settled into we're glad to be relevant in the Big Ten most years, and we do what we do in the tournament, but they're not the expectations of winning Big Ten titles regularly. And Gard's won a couple of them, one at least.
Yeah.
But those expectations that used to be annual under Bo Ryan, they're not there. And I just wonder where the school is at with that. The fan base, obviously, I would think the athletic department is okay with what's going on. The other thing is that there have been rumblings that I've heard, at least, that Wisconsin basketball NIL was only okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now they do have some reasonably high profile portal guys this year, a couple of them that they got. But, the most successful portal guy they've had was somebody who was very much under the radar last year in Tanji.
Right.
So you do wonder where that sits. And it's relevant because Greg Gard is making liberal use of the portal. I mean, he doesn't go as crazy as some other guys do, but he's also not Tom Izzo or Matt Painter.
Right.
He's somewhere in between. So it matters, like, how much juice they've got. So I don't know. It's just, it's still a very good program, still worthy of respect, all of that. But it just doesn't feel like it's been in that position we became accustomed to for a long time, for a while now.
Yeah. Well, it could be sort of a Fran situation where you just are there a while, and just if you're not making progress, at some point people are just like, all right, it's just time to see if we can get to the next level, because I doubt any fan base is happy being 4th or 5th every year. Yeah, we're competitive. We win a bunch of games. Don't do much in March. I don't know. It's not enough to excite the fans. I wouldn't guess. Now, maybe fans are not rational, so it's hard to imagine say, well, considering an NIL situation is about as good as we can expect. I doubt that's the case, but at least for now, it seems like he's in, has firm footing. And again, they're I think exceeding expectations. I can't remember what you had them predicted, but I think maybe you had them 7th or 8th. So this is kind of a little bit, maybe
they're probably right now. They're 6th or 7th.
Okay. Yeah. So
depending upon how you feel about them vis-a-vis UCLA.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's pretty close. I will tell you, earlier in the year, like November, December, I thought I had overrated them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. When they were just getting plastered by everybody.
So they have rallied.
Yeah. So, overall, they're KenPom ranking, they're 38th. And on offense, they're 29th, which is, I think, usual. They're not usually that rated that highly. Which is probably helps since their defense is not as good. They're still managed to win some games because I know before they had to have really good defense because their offense was generally not that highly ranked. They were efficient, but not like a superpower scoring team. They're 8th in turnover rate, which is stereotypical. They don't turn the ball over at all. They shoot free throws very well. They're 78% in the country, which is 14th. Unfortunately for them, they don't get there very often. They're 207th in offensive foul rate. So when they get there, they make them, but they don't get there very often. And they're number 70 from 2. They're 112 from 3s. They're 212th in offensive rebounding. So they're not a good offensive rebounding team.
Never have.
I guess. Yep. It'd be interesting. I'm sure you have it in front of you, but what is their 3-point, attempts versus regular field goal attempts? Because at least in watching them in the Illinois game, it sure seemed they shot a lot of threes.
It was crazy. And that is something that has definitely increased in terms of the reliance on it. Let me see where they're at. It's not crazy. It's 89th.
No, so
it's not
nothing like
an
Illinois
level.
But although they probably shot more than Illinois, it felt like in that game. That's the part I was watching.
But and remember, it was also a critical part of their win over Michigan.
Right.
So it has shown up for them. It's still, though, that's higher than it used to be, because if you remember in the Bo Ryan era, and honestly, even a lot of the period under Greg Gard, they tended to run the swing offense, which was kind of a variant of motion stuff, but it was oriented toward finding, not in the same way that Illinois does to hunt mismatches, but frequently Wisconsin would end up with those kind of situations. They would run a lot of clock in order to get a good shot. And oftentimes it ended up being, say, a mismatch where for years they had guards who were really effective in the post. And so they'd invert their guards. They have the guards in the post and the bigs maybe making the entry pass to them. And teams were not used to trying to stop that, to guard in the post, with perimeter players, for example. So they always have had very efficient offenses. That's not the issue. It's that the style of play is different. They shoot threes more frequently than they used to. They definitely play faster. It's an interesting team because overall, to have an offense in the top 30, pretty good.
Yeah.
But they don't shoot it that well. I mean, they whatever they are,
90th or something.
Notes.
Yeah, 35% from 3. So, not terrible. I guess 112th. So they're worse than Michigan State, surprisingly.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I want to correct myself on the 3-point thing. They're actually 16th.
Oh, 16th. I was
looking at the wrong year. So they are like Illinois.
For 3-point attempts.
Yeah. So what you saw in the Illinois game is actually an accurate barometer. So it is a different kind of thing. And that's okay. But then again, their accuracy wise, they're 111th, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So should you be taking that many threes? I would argue that look, the math would say it's probably okay because they are hitting 35%, which is not bad. Anything over 33% is basically the equivalent to being a 50% shooter from 2. But they're a little better than that. They're 55%, which is good for 69th nationally from 2. Might it be better to tilt your offense the other way? Well, maybe there's an argument, but I think the big part of the problem is why they're not even better offensively in terms of efficiency is they're only a good, not a great 3-point shooting team. So the frequency holds it down. The offensive rebounding, which is standard issue for a Wisconsin team, is non-existent. And they don't get to the line much, as you pointed out. They shoot them great when they're there. They just don't generate many free throws. A lot of that probably to do with the jacking of threes. So it's a good offense. The problem is, much like we talk about, Illinois is rated much higher than theirs, but the same critique I have of Illinois goes with them. Would they actually be better if they were oriented a little differently? I think there's an argument for it.
Well, it's interesting, watching that Wisconsin-Illinois game yesterday night. Uh, Illinois is giving up a lot of offensive rebounds to Wisconsin, which is, uncharacteristic. Both
Yeah, it
for
was
two
weird.
reasons. One is
Really weird.
Illinois giving up offensive rebounds to anybody is unusual, but then to give it up to a team that doesn't offensive rebound very well. My friend made a point, and I don't know if this is how accurate this is, and I don't want you to delve into, but just the thought that if you're a 3-point shooting team, that actually you're less disadvantaged by shooting threes because you end up getting more offensive rebounds because it just the nature of the rebounds. Now, I would counter that and say that maybe that's the case, but I think you're probably also far more vulnerable to fast break opportunities the other end of the
100%.
going the other way too. And that's what Michigan State destroyed Illinois with, and that in East Lansing is that when they missed and didn't get the offensive rebound, then Michigan State was running and punished them at the other end.
And if you want to make that argument, then it should show up in your offensive rebounding numbers. Now, it does with Illinois. So maybe that's his argument. So, well, they're still getting, even on a lot of those misses, they're getting second chances because they're used to long rebounds. Their guards are good at it. They chase those down. Oh, okay. I think the fundamentals are what they are, man. And if you're missing, if you have a bad day shooting the three, you're done. Or you can be done when you orient yourself that heavily to it. And that's a problem. I just know on a team that I'm rooting for, that's a vulnerability I do not want to have going into a win or go home game, which every game in the tournament is.
Right.
It's fine in the regular season. You can even win a conference championship that way. I don't like it when it comes to the NCAA tournament. I want a team that can play any way I need to in order to win a game. And when you're tilted that heavily in one direction, and Wisconsin would be another example of this, I don't like you for having a good shot of a long stay.
Right. All right, so let's move to the other end of the court where we talked about Wisconsin having more issues this season. They are, like we said, 59th nationally on the defensive end. They're 192nd against the twos. They're 136 against threes. They don't turn people over. They're 315th with creating of turnovers, which I guess is pretty typical. They're not a team that it takes a lot of chances.
Never have.
They do defensively rebound really, really well. They're 20th. They're not as good as Michigan State, but they're very, very good there. So you get one opportunity, but it tends to be a good opportunity, I guess is how you put it.
Exactly. And that's something. Defensive rebounding, it's always been the Wisconsin approach, right? They valued, historically, I'm talking about, valued floor balance, so they don't send guys to the offensive boards. They want to prioritize getting back and forcing you to have to go against their half-court defense, which most years is a good strategy. This year, maybe not so much. But the defensive rebounding has always been strong. They play kind of like a souped up version of a good mid-major team in that way. We've seen a lot of teams like that where, they don't do much on the offensive glass, but they really hold it down, even if they're physically overmatched. The difference is Wisconsin has rarely been physically overmatched, so that's why they're typically really good on the defensive glass. But the defense, it's just a simple thing, right? If you're not very good at limiting the opponent's shooting success, it's hard to be a good defense. And they don't make up for it enough. Not that I necessarily advocate creating turnovers as the key to being a good defensive team, but if you're where they are in terms of opponent shot success, you might want to hope you're making up for it somewhere along the line.
Right.
And they don't do that. The best you can say is what you mentioned. It's, if you miss, they're probably not giving you a second chance.
Right.
But the if you miss part is tough.
And so then finally, uncharacteristic for Wisconsin, although I would say that the trend has been moving this direction from a tempo standpoint. They're very much faster. They're probably one of the faster teams in the Big Ten, actually. I mean, their average length of offensive possession is 112th, and their overall tempo is 89th. So this is a team that doesn't mind running.
Yeah, there are some, Michigan certainly plays much, much faster than that. There are some, but in general, and compared to, I didn't look at what it was versus last year, because they really started speeding up last year. So 112th last year. Well, last year they were 184th. So it's definitely continued to speed up. But see, the year before that, 336th in average length of offensive possession. 349 the year before that, 235 the year before that, 320, 346, 345. You get the point.
Yeah, right.
They've gone from being the slowest team in the Big Ten and one of the slowest in the country on an annual basis to a team that's now in the upper third in terms of pace on offense. So that is remarkable. And they've got a team that fits that, you know. I always used to say when on rare occasions when Wisconsin had a truly like athletic dynamic wing that it was unusual because what they tended to have were guys that were, as I was talking about, maybe had good post skills, something you don't think about typically when you're talking about a wing. But they would have, like solidly built guys who were reasonably good shooters, make good decisions, wouldn't turn the ball over, but not athletes, not explosive players. Well, they have some of that now.
Right.
And that is a difference. And it's a team that's built to play this way, so it's intentional. Greg Gard's definitely shifted the last couple of years. It'll be interesting to see if it continues.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways you may just get personnel. You try and create some team that has a certain sort of way of play, but then sometimes you just don't have the right personnel and you just have to play differently. And, that's a credit to him. And we've seen this evolution from player, I think Brad Underwood's a good example where they sort of play differently depending on their personnel and sort of how the team's constructed.
Yep.
He definitely has a way sort of
he adjusts
towards right.
As
I mean,
much as anybody
does the same thing too, right? But not as much.
The fly.
Yeah.
But I think with Wisconsin, it has been a noticeable and intentional shift. It's interesting. They always used to, you always used to be able to say, well, Bo Ryan, and then after him, even Greg Gard, they had their type of player, right? They had guys that they identified who they felt could fit well into their thing, into their system, which, again, some of the things I've talked about emphasize that. They wanted bigs with the potential, at least, to be shooters well before it was in vogue. Really emphasize that. They wanted guards who had versatility, could do a lot of different kinds of things, not just shoot the ball from three, but also, hey, this guy can post up. This guy can handle the ball a little bit. He can make good decisions. He can defend. They didn't emphasize athleticism. That was just never a point of emphasis. Well, now I think you look at what he's done the last couple of years, and I think that has shifted. I think he's very intentionally made a decision to play differently. I'm not quite sure why that's been the case, what motivated it, but it appears to be real. I'm going to be interested to see if it continues.
Yeah, that's where it'd be interesting to talk to someone from the staff, actually. And see what sort of the philosophical changes have been. But
I'm guessing it's out there. To be perfectly honest, I just haven't delved into it to see if Greg Gard's gone into any great level of detail about why the philosophical change.
Maybe. Sometimes a lot of these, there's just not that content that exists, but it's entirely possible. So that brings us to the interesting wager brought to you by Fanduel. Of course, Fanduel should be your go-to app whenever you want to gamble on sports, whether it's college basketball, the Super Bowl, or whatever it might be, an NBA, NHL, and baseball. Shocking news. I couldn't believe my son told me that JV joined the Tigers. I'm like, what are you talking about? Huh. JV Verlander? And then he said,
I'll tell you something. I'm going to admit this. I actually, when I saw that news come across, I just for a brief moment, I got a little emotional and it surprised me.
Yeah.
But that was incredible yesterday to see that happen. It was this thing that people had been really, with some good reason, had been wondering about and speculating it could have happened, because I think you could have made arguments either of the last two seasons for sure that it might have made sense, and it didn't happen. And so you began to think, well, the older he gets, the less likely it seems that there's a fit. Right. But there was, and I know there's going to be a lot of people who still are holding on to those Verlander jerseys that are going to be very happy. this summer.
Yeah, my son was even joking that Scherzer's a free agent too. So
Yeah,
that would have been
big. But that's a funny because I was actually thinking about that. I've seen people posted about that too. But that's the thing. Max Scherzer is going to go down as one of the great pitchers in baseball history. I mean, he's locked that up. He will. Definitely one of the elite guys of his era. And you can make an argument that his career is probably right there with Verlander's overall. Absolutely can. Never was the icon in Detroit that Justin Verlander was.
No,
well, there are reasons for that.
They get drafted, all kinds of reasons. Right.
He wasn't a homegrown guy. They acquired him via trade. Justin pitched probably twice as long in Detroit. And but it's just, it happens sometimes in sports. There are some guys that just they capture people's imagination in a way that others don't, and it's not about talent. And I think that was the case, but there's no argument, in my opinion, of the last 30 years. It's Verlander and Cabrera. Maybe Skubal's getting into that territory, but it's Verlander and Cabrera, and I'd probably give Verlander the edge in terms of the way that he captured the imagination of the fan base. I really do. So to have him coming back was it's phenomenal. I just hope it works out.
I do too. You can head over to Fanduel right now. There's all kinds of baseball prop bets you can do right now. In fact, the best odds, of course, for Cy Young, Tarek Skubal in the American League, plus 240. And I think Michigan and Detroit is plus 850 for winning the American League. So go to the World Series. We'll see. We'll see. So you hop on over to that and check those out if you want. Of course, as usual, since this is not quite as big a game, and when we're recording that we do not yet have odds yet for this game, it is pretty much a pick 'em. At least looking at Bartorvik, it's like Michigan State has an edge of like 0.6 points. So it's maybe give them a point.
Let me take a look.
KenPom, because KenPom seems to be a little closer.
KenPom has MSU by 4.
Oh, so that's quite a big difference. So that's probably what it's going to be. So it's probably going to be about 3.5 points for Michigan State. Then it would be my guess.
I think Michigan State will be favored. I'd be surprised if they're not. But it's going to be close. It's not going to be a huge number.
Right. So that's the number. I guess I don't even know. I wouldn't even know. I feel like we're kind of getting quite a few of them right initially, and now then Michigan State sort of thinks it's sort of turned sideways a little bit. I mean, they picked up covered it obviously against Illinois. They just had that bad stretch, and whether the question I guess really is, was that a 3-game bad stretch and they sort of things have turned around, or is the Illinois game sort of an anomaly? I tend to think not, but I don't know. I also don't know where Wisconsin's head's going to be after that big game against Illinois. You can kind of imagine it, it's a big emotional, long, overtime victory. And we kind of wiped out and sucked a lot out of them, or they would be energized and now they know they got a chance to make some real, noise in the Big Ten. Who knows?
There's a lot of both ways. You got to wonder. Is Michigan State with a layoff? You say normally this time of the year, you're grateful for the rest and the ability to focus on one opponent and to have that many days in prep for them, whereas Wisconsin will not have that advantage. But flipping it the other direction, do they lose a little bit of sharpness? You don't know. I tend to think the former is more likely than the latter. It's not like they're off a week.
Right. It's 5 days, 6 days, whatever.
And on the other end, Wisconsin has been inconsistent this year. And again, that generally tends to go with teams that don't defend well. It's hard to be consistent.
Yeah.
When you don't guard well.
Well, and they've showed vulnerability at home as well, right?
Right.
That's the other
lost
thing.
Twice at home. Yes. So it's just, I think you can go any way you want in terms of those factors.
As is usually the case, you never know. I do know that had Michigan State lost that game to Illinois, even if it had been by a point or lost in overtime or something, this would have been a really long and miserable week to have lost 3 in a row. So it would have been really bad. And I don't know where their head would be going into this game. I feel much better about them going to this game. Obviously feel better after win, but I think that would have been really hard after.
Well, both teams are coming into it having beaten Illinois.
So that is weird too, isn't it?
Yeah.
That can't happen very
they
often.
both feel good about themselves. I think Wisconsin, a very similar kind of scenario. Before the Illinois game, they had that controversial loss at Indiana in overtime. I'm sure they felt like if they had lost that game to Illinois, would they have been reeling coming into this one? I think for both teams, that win was very significant to the psyches, if nothing else.
And I don't know, it may just be an overrepresentation on social media, but I feel like Illinois fans complain about the officiating more than any fan base.
No, in social media, it's absolutely true. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I can understand you say you lose one game, lose Michigan State, you can blame the rest, but to lose back-to-back games, it's like, okay, you lost one at home and you say,
no, it's constant.
You complain with the officiating, but you had more fouls called to the other team than you. I mean, I just don't.
And then Brad Underwood gets up there, and I get it. It's frustrating. I'm not even saying that he's wrong.
No, right. I mean, we know that refs miss calls all the time.
You can't do that. That's just not, for as much as people say Jeremy Fears can't do the stuff. Okay, I agree. He can't do the stuff he's done. You know what a coach can't show, in my opinion, at least? There's something to be said for sticking up for your guys. I get that. But man, bitching about officials, not generally the right look. Because the message it sends to your team, I think, is not you want your team to have a resiliency and to be able to say to itself and mean it, look, we're going to win even if it's 5-on-8.
Right.
I just don't know. I get it. Frustrated, all that. And I thought Brad Underwood was actually great in the post game of the Michigan State loss. So I don't want to bag on him this time. But yeah, that I have respect for the team he's got this year, and for him, the way he's coached them. I have zero respect for that fan base. They're awful.
Yeah,
awful.
Well, yeah, even my friends, Illinois fans, like, yeah, these are there's a portion of a fan base that's just
I've just never seen anything like it. It's everything that goes wrong is down to officials.
Yeah,
it's never. And that's not to hold the Michigan State fan base up as some bastion
or any other fan base.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah. Or any of them. Right. But you know what? Frequently you will see at least a decent amount of Michigan State fans in the wake of a loss talking about the things that Michigan State did not do well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't ever see that from the Illinois fan base. It's a constant litany of them being robbed by officials who somehow, my favorite is, and Michigan State fans will love this, that you get these people who will talk about how the Big Ten needed to ensure that Michigan State didn't lose a third straight game for the narrative that they in other words, as if Michigan State is the favored son of the conference. I'm like,
the Kansas City Chiefs.
You haven't been watching long enough, Chief, if you think that's the case. Because I can yeah, it's unbelievable. Thank God MSU's had a nice run against the Illini recently, because you can laugh about it. But
yeah,
that fan base is just insanely bad.
Did you see the tweet from Jeremy Fears Sr.?
Which one's that?
He had a picture of the 4 games against Illinois with the scores for Michigan State, Illinois, and he said, "Boy, the refs were really working hard, and the refs have really worked hard over the years," or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, that's it, and just stunning to me. And that's the thing that's really weird and disappointing about it. I think, just from a mostly neutral observer's perspective, is unlike a Michigan, for example, I do believe Illinois cares as a fan base and as an institution about basketball. They're passionate about it.
No question.
Why are they not smarter?
Maybe they just have a lot of a large percentage, or just a very loud percentage that is just kind of annoying.
I guess, but
I don't know.
It's striking, and it's really unfortunate, because, as I say, that environment in their building is a good home court environment. People come out for those games. They care about it as a sport. They've actually got a good tradition, not a great one, because they haven't won anything really, but a good tradition.
Yeah.
And And so that should be celebrated, but it's just not, because their fan base is nuts.
Yeah.
Wow. Northwestern is up 12, 10 minutes into the game against Michigan. This will probably be vastly outdated
as we record this. If by the time this releases on Thursday, Michigan will have won by 44 or something.
Maybe.
All right. Well, speaking of winning big, there's no better place to go to than the Brothers Adjusted Gutters. They'll make sure they take care of your gutters and do a fantastic job. You'll be the big winner on your block when you have the only gutters that drain properly and get to keep the leaves out of it, because you got a leaf garden. While your neighbors are up on the ladder, you can sit back in your lawn chair and laugh at them as they're cleaning things out, because you just don't have to do that anymore. Contact the Brothers Adjusted Gutters today. You go to our support page at tffinots.com/support. There you can get a hold of Kurt or Greg, depending where you are in the state of Michigan, whether you're in the east or the west side. They'll hook you up. They'll give you a great pricing. And also, as a listener to the show, you get 10% off simply by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. Call them today. They'll come out, take care of it right now. They do not have to wait until it's nice weather, because you want to get this taken care of before the rains start coming in the spring, which theoretically is coming at some point. I know, despite the groundhog saying we had another 6 weeks or whatever. And a say sponsor the player that your state need to keep in the gutter. And we'll begin with the starters here for Wisconsin. Beginning with Nick Boyd, 6'3" senior, transferred in from San Diego State. I played for Dusty May down in Florida Atlantic, and then also with Brian Dutcher at San Diego State. So he's kind of had a little Michigan connection.
Nick Boyd's a good basketball player. I don't have any particular beef with him, but boy, can he pick them. Playing for those two guys. I'll just leave it at that. Brian Dutcher's a scumbag from way back.
Yeah. So Boyd is averaging 20.2 points a game to lead the team. He's shooting 47, 35, 82. Averages almost 6 free throws a game. And doesn't shoot a ton of threes. Only a third of his shots are from three. And 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, averaging 3.6 assists per game. So really good guard, a really good pickup for the Badgers out of the portal.
Yeah, he was a guy that was seen as I don't know what they had to pay for him, but he was seen as a good pickup. And there was some early season, both with him and the next guy we're going to talk about, John Blackwell. There was some early inconsistency. They didn't seem to be able to have good games together, but that's been ironed out. And Boyd has been playing very good basketball now for quite a while. I mean, to be 20 plus, points per game, he's getting, and reasonably efficient.
Yeah.
I like his game. I mean, he's a good enough shooter that you got to respect him from three, but unusually for a team that goes crazy with it, he doesn't.
Right.
Taking threes. And that means he's a very dangerous scorer. It kind of reminds me a little bit. He's not the same kind of player at all, but in the sense that he's truly a 3-level threat. It's a little bit like John Tanji was last year for Wisconsin. If you remember, Tanji could do real damage from three. He was an even better shooter than Boyd, but he was also so put together so well physically, had a good enough handle. He could get himself to the rim. He could draw fouls. He could finish in there. He could hit mid-ranges. Boyd gives them some of that kind of presence where it's not all just jumpers. And the Wisconsin system has never been one that's been point guard centric. They share the ball as a team, but he fits the mold of the nominal point guard in that decent assist numbers. He's at about not even 40% of what Jeremy Fears does, but he doesn't make a lot of mistakes either. And that's what they want. That's what they emphasize.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Speaking of Blackwell, John Blackwell's a 6'4" junior. He's from Michigan, from Brother Rice, averaging almost 19 points a game. So pretty close to Boyd as far as scoring, shooting 41, 37, 85. The difference is he shoots over half his shots from beyond the arc. Also pulls in a lot of rebounds game. He's 5 a game. And he's also a little bit, at least compared to the typical sort of Wisconsin player, he's certainly more athletic and sort of dynamic.
Very dynamic athletically. Yeah, 100%. That's what I was talking about earlier. You think of the stereotypical Wisconsin guard, and you don't think about a guy who plays like John Blackwell.
Right.
It was funny. And I don't think Izzo's ever publicly, maybe I've missed it, touched on this before, but he did today. He said he lamented not focusing on Blackwell as a recruit, and in fact said he'd like to fire his assistants for missing on him, but then he'd have to fire himself because he did the same thing. Yeah, there's no excuses when it's a Michigan kid. And Blackwell committed very early. I believe he committed in
sophomore year or junior.
Yeah, okay. maybe between sophomore and junior year. Definitely by his junior year he had committed, and he never wavered on that. And it's been a great addition for Wisconsin. I mean, he wasn't even. There was a guy named, what was his name? Was it Curtis? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. He went to Louisville and flamed out of there real quickly. He was not even the top guy on his high school team, which was not a state champion either. They were kind of a little bit of an underachiever. But for a guy who was, and I believe he was ranked outside of the top 100, but he's been really good. He was very good as a freshman, much better last year as a sophomore, and now he's, after some early inconsistency this year, he's taken another step up. And you look at where the numbers sit right now, and they're probably about what you would have expected from him for the season. So he's gotten to where they would have hoped he would be. Yeah. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, good player
on his part. Yeah, and he's a tough cover. And you put he and Boyd together, not many guard combinations anywhere that I think are more explosive and versatile offensively than those two guys.
Yeah, certainly don't have it at Michigan State from an offensive standpoint, from the shooting and everything. Yeah.
Nope.
So moving to the wing, we have Andrew Rohde, 6'6" senior transfer from Virginia, averaging a little over 6 points a game, shooting 39, 32, and 76. But, he's also brings age, which is something that a lot of teams certainly look for out of the portal.
Yeah, I think they probably hope for a little better production from three out of him. He is mostly that as an offensive player. He's not, as opposed to these first two guys, not really a versatile scorer. He's more of a three-pointer bust kind of guy, and the percentage is not where they would have hoped. I think they would have hoped for at least like a high 30s kind of guy, and he has not been that. But as you say, he's played a lot of basketball, gives them some size for the position at 6'6", and at least the potential to be a shot maker in any game.
Then we have Alexis Bielauskas, 6'10", 250-pound freshman from Lithuania, averaging 4.5 points a game, 4 rebounds a game, shooting 45, 33, and 71. So he's got a little bit of that stretchability, just sort of on the probably bits for a freshman, pretty good. Playing 18 minutes, so he plays a decent amount considering it's his first year.
Yeah, and maybe a little more than they would have anticipated coming in, but it's amounted to more of a rotation role than a true starter's spot in terms of the minutes played, right? Mm-hmm. He's had some big moments. He was huge in their win at Michigan, shooting the three, just massive. And he hasn't really had another game, certainly a Big Ten game like that since, but productive. And they needed another body. They had a couple of guys that they liked and who have played well on the interior, but two's usually not going to be enough.
Right.
You usually need that third guy, and he has been that for them. And he's one of these Europeans who's not a 23-year-old. So it feels more legit.
Yeah. Finally, we have Nolan Winter, 7-footer, 235-pound junior. I feel like Wisconsin always has a player who looks just like this guy. He's averaging almost 14 points a game, almost 9 rebounds a game, 1.25 blocks a game, shooting 57, 33, and 76. I feel like at 33 is not really much different than he's been the last year, maybe even down from last year. But
I think
other than that, he's, I think probably rounding into sort of your prototypical Wisconsin center.
100%. Let me look real quick to see what the 3-point rate was. Yeah, last year he was 36%.
Yeah,
so it is down a tick. But look, this guy, and I'll return to a theme I've talked about many times over the years. Not only is he a native of Minnesota, his dad played for Minnesota, and he ends up at Wisconsin. problem for the Minnesota program that Nico Medved is going to hope to finally stop the bleeding. But anyway, you're 100% right about, oh, does this look familiar? Yes, it does. Wisconsin has a knack for finding, and that's why, even though they've got the different style of play now, this guy is very much in line with what they've had for the last 25 years, at least 30 years. Guys who just gradually get a little bit better every year. They used to make a regular habit of redshirting guys. In fact, they're the only program I can think of, certainly in the Big Ten over this last generation, that actually redshirted a McDonald's All-American, Brian Butch, who was a 7-footer who became a very good player eventually. They've had a habit of it. The difference here, Winter actually showed a fair amount as a freshman, but now he's taken it up, a couple levels last year and continuing to rise this year as well. Nice player to have, very valuable kind of guy, because he can shoot threes, even if they'd like the percentage to be a little bit better.
Right.
But he's also fairly effective in the post as well. Just a versatile big man right out of the Wisconsin assembly line.
Yeah, and I feel like he moves better than who's the guy they had when he replaced?
Kroll.
Kroll. Yeah, he moves better than Kroll. I feel like he just
I agree
is
with
a little
that.
bit, more
I think he's a
athletic.
better player. Kroll was a guy who was good, but always seemed to be just kind of teasing you a little bit and never quite followed through on his potential. But this guy, I think, already is, with one more year left to play, is better.
Yeah. All right, then moving on to the reserves, we'll begin with Austin Rapp, 6'10", 240-pound sophomore. He's transferred out of Portland. He's originally from Australia. So he is shooting, scoring 9.5 points a game, a little under 4 rebounds a game, plays 21 minutes, shooting 43, 33, and 83, and most of his shots are outside the arc as well.
Yeah, and he was, maybe surprisingly, but I guess it shouldn't be, there's certain guys who are rising from the mid-major level and get a lot of attention. Rapp was one of those. He was West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year, had a very good first season at Portland. And when he entered the portal, he was a hot commodity. And the fact that Wisconsin was able to get him was actually pretty impressive, that they were able to come down with his commitment. They had very high expectations for him. I don't know if he's quite met them, but you also have to understand he's had sort of an up and down year from a health perspective.
Yeah,
he
makes
missed 4 games. He missed 3 games due to an injury earlier, and then he missed the Indiana game because of an illness. Now, he came back to play against Illinois and was really productive in that game. He was a big part of that upset in Champaign. So he seems to be back. The overall numbers are good, and they're in line with what was expected of him. He was seen as a legit big who was offensively mostly a perimeter shooter. Like, that's what he was supposed to do, and that's what he has been doing. They would hope for better accuracy, but 33% is not a disaster either. It's okay.
No.
The biggest thing is if they can retain him, he's got 2 more years. So I would think he's a guy that they're going to expect, heading into next year, is going to be set to take another step forward. But right now, he's a pretty good option. The fact of the matter is, in terms of talent, he is one of their 5 best players. But they started him a little bit early in the season, and now they've settled into this rotation where he's coming off the bench, and it seems to be working for everybody. So they've stuck with it.
And then a name that might be familiar to folks is Braden Carrington. He played for a couple of years at Minnesota. He's now a senior. He played a year in Tulsa after he left the Gophers. 6'5", averaging 7 points a game on 41, 40, and 78 shooting. So clearly he's an outside threat. He shoots about 80% of his shots come from outside the arc.
Yeah, he's gotten better, because my memory of him at Minnesota was he was okay, not this level of shooter. And he did 2 years in Minnesota, then did last year at Tulsa, and now has come back to the Big Ten. He's been really important for Wisconsin because you need to have, especially given that they play much faster than they used to, you need to have at least one guard that you can filter in there and get some decent reserve minutes out of. And he's been more than decent. He's been a real presence for them, a productive 3-point shooter. We said 80% of his shots coming from three. So that tells you it's pretty much three or bust for him offensively, but you shoot at 40%, you're making real contributions.
Yeah. Next, we have Jack Janicki. He's a 6'5" sophomore, averaging a little over 2 points a game, 2 rebounds a game, plays quite a bit, 17 minutes, shooting 30, 26, and 60. I feel like he's a guy who has like one really good play a game, and then maybe two, and then he has a couple plays that are.
I kind of expected him to take a little more of a jump this year.
I'm actually surprised he scored so little because he felt like a guy who's on the verge last year, right?
Forced his way into the rotation as last season went along, and he just felt like another one of those, lightly recruited guys. I believe he is a native of Wisconsin, and they've had a lot of these kind of players over the years where it's a guy who doesn't have a huge amount of attention in recruiting, but they get him, and he doesn't wow you with anything he does, but he's just productive. I thought he would give them a little bit more. The shooting has not been good. But you're right. He is a guy who's capable of, we talk about with Jordan Scott, and he's not Jordan Scott, but there are some guys who can make winning plays that don't even necessarily show up in the stat sheet. And that is kind of what he's bringing for them more than anything else this year.
Yeah. I feel like he's in a little bit like Sam Hoiberg, only in the sense that Sam sort of arrived just because the difference was that Sam is in a team that was depleted, and so he was forced to sort of have a bigger role. But Janicki is the kind of guy, again, just makes plays, and I think you appreciate his hustle and sort of how hard he plays, and he could be very positive, brings energy off the bench. Finally, there's Will Garlock. He's another 7-footer, 230-pound freshman, just averages a point a game and a rebound a game, plays about 7 minutes. And so he's someone maybe we'll see, maybe we won't.
Yeah. And if he does play, I think it'll be a quick, he played 2 minutes against Illinois, probably about that, where it'll be a quick cameo just to get somebody a blow, trying to get their way to a TV timeout, right? It'll be that sort of deal.
Right.
Not really ready for prime time. And truthfully, in most circumstances, they don't need him. They've got enough with their three bigs, but every once in a while they might get caught short when they're like, we need to get 2-3 minutes out of this guy, and that's his role. Just kind of hold the fort down, soak up those minutes.
Yeah, it's nice having those guys. If there's you get foul issues in with half or something, it's 2 quick fouls and no winner or something like that. All right, so who do you have as the Brothers Just Gutters player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter?
This is a tough one.
I was going to say,
most of these, it's very obvious, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to play the home state card. I'm going to go with John Blackwell.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Even though he's not playing in Michigan, I'm going to assume he gets jacked a little. And I haven't actually gone back to look at how he's fared in prior Michigan State games, but I'm going to assume he's a little more up for it emotionally. So that's the tiebreaker for me. He and Boyd would be very close.
Yeah. I feel like it's been a while since Michigan State's lost to Wisconsin. Am I wrong? Or is that? I feel like they lost to AJ Hoggard.
The Big Ten tournament.
Oh, right. Yeah. I forget about those games.
After they well, because they're a sack race, but yeah.
I'm talking about regular season, but yes, you're right. I forgot.
Regular season.
I was only there. I should have remembered.
Yeah.
I know I'm pretty sure they lost that game because Winter might have been a freshman that year. Kroll just destroyed them from 3. That was right before.
Let's see.
Then they went to Nebraska.
They won the regular season game. Okay, they lost. Yep, they lost the year before that. So that's 2 in a row. 24. They won in 24. So Michigan State's won the last 2.
Okay, so not really much of a string. Yeah. All right.
They swept Michigan State in 24.
Okay. Yes, that was, okay. All right, well, head on over to the Squeegee Squad at Grand Rapids. If you want your windows cleaned, whether it's your home or business, they'll clean those windows. They'll power wash your house, which, right now you probably could schedule that, although they're not going to go out right now in the snow and ice and hose down your house, but they will definitely take care of it. and they can put you on the schedule, and probably good deal. So you get 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. And of course, at our support page at tffinots.com/support. Troy's team will come take care of things. They'll do the interior of the place, blind screens, all the stuff you won't do. Plus, of course, they'll get up on the gutter so you don't have to. And they sponsor the Who Cleans the Glass Best. And right now, Rod, you're on a heater. You've won like 4 of the last 5 or something like that. Or maybe 3 of the last 4. I can't remember exactly what it was. I was on a big run. And anyway, so you're up 11-10 right now with 7 to go. Of course, the stakes are you do part of the show with helium and I do part of the show with a basketball in my head. And I was thinking if we were to end in a tie, I think we both have to lose is I think really what really happens. But I'm going to assume someone's going to win. I get to pick first this time. I'm going with Jackson Kohler since hopefully he has I feel like every time I've got him recently, he's had like a lousy game, like 4 or 5 rebounds, but maybe with having his dad on helps.
Let's hope not. No, if it's what it's what it takes. I want Jackson to have a bunch of rebounds. I just want Carson Cooper to have a couple more. I'm going to go with Coop.
Yep.
And to join him, this is where it gets tough now. I'm going to go with Cohen Carr.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I'm at the point where I'm confident enough I'm going to go with Ward as my second. Because those are clearly the 4 you need to pick at this point.
Well,
Ward seems like he's fully back
caveat,
at this point.
Honestly, my other thought was, believe it or not, was not Cam Ward. It was Jordan Scott.
Yeah.
Because this is a team that jacks threes, and you wonder, are there going to be more long rebounds than usual? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see.
Those are just as much as there's variability in 3-point shooting, there's, I think, even bigger variability in 3-point rebounding. Like it just totally random where it goes, right? Because Jordan played a ton of minutes. What, he played 27 minutes against Illinois, 28 or something. What do you have? 1 rebound, I think. I mean, almost none. And it's not like he's not trying. Right. They just weren't ending up in his hands.
Yeah, you just don't know.
Yeah. So, all right. And that, of course, brings us to 5 Keys of the Game, brought to you by Nudge Printing. If you want great Spartan apparel, head on over to Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. And if you go to nudgeprinting.com/win, you can enter for the $120 value of the Travis Matthew Spartan basketball, I should say Sparty basketball quarter zip. Really sweet. It's like a quarter zip like I got, except it's a lot nicer than this one. This is actually not Nudge. I do have a Nudge t-shirt underneath, but you can't really see it too much, but which are super comfortable. The course lasts forever. And you can get 20% off simply by typing in TFFINOTS at the checkout. They also have the Jackson Kohler collection, which is super cool. It's with Jackson Kohler basically screaming like he does after a 3-point shot all the time. So we had Jeff, if you're listening, you've heard us talk to Jeff Kohler before. Those shirts are on sale. Those proceeds obviously go to support Jackson in his education, his career. So heading over to Nudge Printing now and support a great Spart. Gabe and Brittany do a fantastic job, all based in Michigan, and have all kinds of other things besides just Spartan apparel. They can do other things too with fabricated customs if you need something for a corporate event. But you can check it all out at nudgeprinting.com. All right, so the first key of the game is handle the environment. This has been a place that tradition was really hard. Like you just assumed this was an automatic loss. I feel like this was even more of an automatic loss than going to Mackey 15 years ago. Like you just never thought you'd win in Madison. And it's been a little less like that. I feel Michigan State's had some more luck or fortune there recently. But it's still not going to be an easy one. And this is a good Wisconsin team. And so I'm sure they're going to be ready for Michigan State. The crowd is for sure.
Yeah. I'm doing some quick math here. Okay. So they were 1-0 in that season, and then 22. Okay, so 1-1. Yeah, I mean, Michigan State's only won once in at Cole. in the last 5 tries.
Okay, well then I take it all back.
No,
I
but
feel like
you're
during
right.
Cassius
There was
they
a
were.
run. I will say this: they're definitely. It's not what it was during peak Bo Ryan, where you're right. It was just an automatic. But it's interesting. I have not been to a game at Cole, so I can't speak from personal experience, but I had my perspective on it turned around a little bit by a couple seasons back when we had Coach Mike Garland on as a guest. And we were talking about, the environments on the road. And he said Wisconsin was not actually a particularly tough environment in terms of the building and the crowd.
Right. It was the
they
team
have a
that they were
good
going
they have a good
against.
turnout, but the layout of that arena, and you could see it when you watch it on television, it is very similar to like Ohio State, Value City, where it's more of a pro style layout. In other words, the crowd is not on top of you the way they are at places like Breslin or Mackey or either of the assembly halls. It's not that. So I think that the difficulties over the years have probably had a lot more to do with the quality of the teams Wisconsin's had than the building. But it's a road game, and it's against a good opponent. I don't think Wisconsin, as we talked about, good team. They got flaws, but a good team. MSU's 4-2 in the league on the road so far, which is a good number. Normally, your MO is, if you want to contend for the league, win them all at home, split on the road. Well, they haven't done either of those things. Well, they've done better than that on the road, I guess. They haven't won them all at home. They've lost one. But the thing is, the slate they've played on the road is not exactly murderer's row. The two losses came against a good Nebraska team and a Minnesota team that's maybe not great. That was if you could say a road loss, a bad loss, that was probably it. If you look at the wins, Penn State, Rutgers, Washington, and Oregon.
Yeah.
Not exactly a murderer's row.
Dregs of the Big Ten.
And two of those, Penn State and Rutgers, they really struggled to get over the finish line. Exactly. They got it done, which is what counts. But, really, I would say and Oregon is so bad and was so depleted at that point that you just the only road game that really looked solid was probably the Washington game. And even that, Washington's not great.
No.
So this would be, by a considerable margin, the best road win of the season so far. And we're looking at what's left on that schedule. You got this one, you're at Assembly Hall in Bloomington, you're at Purdue, you're at Michigan. Those are your 4 remaining road games. They're not easy. This is probably the third toughest of those. I would say Indiana is not as good as Wisconsin, but Purdue and Michigan, clearly tougher games on paper. So there's an opportunity here, certainly, for Michigan State, but we know the drill. They're going to have to go in. They're going to have to play very well if they want to get out of here with a win. And Wisconsin is a team that is still very much playing for things. They're only one out in the loss column of being second in the league.
Exactly. Yeah.
So even though right now you look at where their metrics sit, and it's hard to imagine them being in the conversation for any better than, say, a 7 seed right now. They're 39th in KenPom overall. So it's okay, certainly in the field, but it's not a great position. A lot of that is because of all those blowouts I talked about.
Right.
So they've got work to do. Like they can be, I think if I were a Wisconsin fan, I would be thinking, you know what? We've got 2 great wins. Great. And we need to build our case the rest of the way to really maximize the impact of those. And they're not playing for they're not even looking at a protected seed, I don't think. I don't know that I believe they could get to the 4 line realistically. But they could maybe get to a 6 or a 5 if they play well enough. And this would be a game they absolutely would need. They don't get a win at home against Michigan State. That hurts them.
Yeah.
In terms of the seeding conversation, so it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but that's what you sign on for every year in the Big Ten, right? There's nothing unusual about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're a 1A opportunity, whether you play them on the road or at home. It's an opportunity for Wisconsin win. So you'd rather play those tough games at home if you can. Just like Michigan State got Illinois, you'd rather play them in Breslin than you would in Champaign. All right. So the second key to the game are the boards, of course. Wisconsin, really good defensive rebounding team. What we said, 20th offensive rebounding team. They are non-existent pretty much. Michigan State's number 5 offensive rebounding team. And number 1 defensive rebounding team. So, I mean, you would expect that Wisconsin's going to get almost no offensive rebounds. Now, we say that, yet again, like I said, I'd have to look at the numbers specifically for that game. But, I mean, Wisconsin had a lot of offensive rebounds against Illinois.
32, only a 32% rate. I think the raw number was like 13 or 14. Yeah. But it was a 32% rate.
Because they took so many shots. Yeah.
Which is decent. But you have to grade
better than
it
their
on
number
a
would
curve.
suggest, though.
You have to grade it on a curve.
Yeah.
And against that team, and given what Wisconsin does, 32% is fantastic. Because that's above, the cutoff line of mediocrity is 30%.
Right.
So to be above that and above that against an elite rebounding team at both ends, which Illinois is, that was remarkable. So it demonstrates that they're at least capable of flukes.
Well,
if nothing else, Michigan State can't let that happen.
I want to ask you a question about this. There's no question, like we watched the Washington game as a good example. That team clearly decided they were not going to offensive rebound. Like I don't even know what it ended up being, like 12% offensive rebounding rate or something for Washington. And that was a strategic decision without a doubt. Right.
Yep.
And Wisconsin plays strategically. They have 4 or 5 guys rebounding basically defensively, and they have almost no one offensive rebound. Now, clearly they changed that strategy against Illinois. I don't think they, so I wonder, their offensive rebounding rate's really low, but is that just a general, this is usually who we are, but we're going to change our philosophical approach this game for this team because we think the only way we can stay in it is if we, offensive rebound against Illinois, we might catch them off guard. They're not ready for it, because I can't imagine you can be so good defensive rebounding and they're just so bad offensive rebounding unless there's some sort of commitment to not do it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you're 100% correct. I said it near the outset of this episode. Wisconsin historically has prioritized floor balance. So what that means is a shot goes up, guys are getting back as opposing to crash the boards because they don't want to get caught out in transition. That goes doubly historically when they are facing a Michigan State, who they know want to run. The equation there is they are figuring the odds of them getting an offensive rebound and turning it into something productive is outweighed by the value of consistently getting back and shutting off transition opportunities. I would argue with their team this year, there's a less compelling case for that because their half-court defense has not been good. Normally, it makes perfect sense. Wisconsin would say, look, we're fine with you having to walk the ball up the court and run 25 seconds of shot clock to try and get a good look against our defense. This year, pretty good chance you're going to get a good look. But their rebounding numbers offensively suggest that they are doing exactly what you said. They are not committing bodies to offensive rebounds. Why they opted to do that with more frequency against Illinois is a good question. And you might be right. They might have felt like there was a surprise element in that. I don't know, but that might have been in the equation there. I'm going to be surprised if we see that against Michigan State. Mm-hmm. There is a difference. Illinois is not a transition team.
I was going to say they don't try and break ever. Right. So you don't lose. There's not much risk.
Michigan State absolutely is.
Yeah, right.
And you are running a big risk. So I would expect that they do not do much on the offensive boards, even if they tried to commit bodies. There is a difference. Illinois is a good defensive rebounding team, very good. They're not Michigan State. Michigan State's number 1 in the country. Yeah. There is a little gap there in that phase of the game. So your odds, you factor that in with the transition stuff. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see much of it.
Yeah, I had forgotten that.
The trick's going to be at the other end. Michigan State, a top 5 offensive rebounding team. Wisconsin, 20th on the defensive boards. There's a battle. Can Michigan State, and we've seen Michigan State do it. I mean, pretty consistently, even against the best rebounding opponents they've faced. It's been a rare occasion that their offensive rebounding has not been able to make its presence felt. Against Illinois, I think they were 39% offensive rebounding rate, pretty much on the seasonal average, which against that team is a success, big success. So, can they get into the high 30s at least in this game? If they can, that's a big positive.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd forgotten that Illinois just never tries to score in transition. And you could argue that
it's probably at the core of why Wisconsin figured there was
exactly
security in trying that.
Yeah, certainly against Michigan State, if you can't stop Michigan State from the transition game, you're going to have a long day. If you can if you push Michigan State into the half court the entire game, your chance of success is way higher, obviously, from a defensive standpoint. All right. And so the third key of the game is mistakes. This is something that Michigan State was very good. And that's probably the reason they did so well against Illinois. They had 8 turnovers. I think 3 of them in the first 4 possessions or something like that, 5 possessions. And then they really cleaned it up. And this is, Wisconsin's not a team that forces turnovers, but Michigan State's found that ways of turning the ball over without being forced to. So they just have to play smart.
And that's the thing you worry about. You certainly don't go into this game concerned about Wisconsin ball hawking you into mistakes. Isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
It's all about, can Michigan State handle business well enough itself and avoid making silly, unforced errors? Because even if they carve out an edge on the boards, as I expect them to, you don't want to give that back in terms of the turnover differential. And you can be pretty certain that Wisconsin's not going to give it away very much themselves. So there's a little bit of pressure on Michigan State to value the ball well.
And so the fourth key to the game is attacking the paint. This is something we talk about all the time. You should say its 2-point shooting has improved. It was, and that's, where they're usually best. And Wisconsin is not a good 2-point defense aside from, Winter provides some rim protection, I suppose, but outside of him,
there's no shot blocking other than him.
Yeah.
They're not good. They're on the borderline of falling out of the top 200 against twos. That's rough. And I think you look at Michigan State being so much better since the first of the year in its 2-point offense. And that's a variety of reasons for that. I think we've gone over this several times. I think they've been a little bit better in terms of converting offensive rebounding dominance into points. Transition game has been part of it for sure, because most of the transition opportunities and point production are layups and dunks. Occasionally you get some threes, but it's more the former than the latter this year, at least. And I think maybe the biggest of them is just general improvement in finishing overall. Jeremy Fears being the most obvious example of that. How much better he's gotten even as this year has worn on in terms of finishing those plays within, say, 5 feet of the basket.
Yep.
Vast improvement. And so you put all those things together, Michigan State's been a lot better from 2. I think they're going to have opportunities to be successful against this team inside the arc when MSU has the ball. They've got to cash in on them. This is not a team that's proven to be very capable at stopping opponents. So you have to take advantage of that.
And they've definitely shown them to be a team that can score really well. I mean, they scored against a really good defense against Illinois.
Yeah,
and
true.
So you can't go with a lot of empty possessions because you might find yourself behind.
You are going to need, Wisconsin again, not a brilliant offensive team. We've seen Illinois, for example, was number 1 in the country coming into that game. So we've seen better.
Yeah.
But they're good. And at home, you would expect they'd be even a little bit better. You're absolutely right about that. You're going to need to be efficient. What's a big key to efficiency generally? Converting your 2-point opportunities.
Yeah. Pretty remarkable. Michigan State's moved up to 90th now and 2
considering where they were.
They were sub 200?
Well, it goes to show you that, sometimes people at us, say by December, they get locked into thinking they know what a team is. And oftentimes that's borne out to be true. But Michigan State's improvement should be taken as an example of the fact that it is possible, in fact, to get better over the course of a season. And if Michigan State's 2-point offense was the same as it was in December, there'd be a few more losses for sure on the old ledger right now. They've had to improve it, and they have. So,
all right. And so the final key to the game is pace. This is interesting because, usually it's Wisconsin slowing it down and sort of trying to frustrate you into playing slow. And that's not going to be the case this time. So it'll be kind of interesting what happens.
I'm going to be very interested to see how it plays out. We've talked a little bit about we don't expect Wisconsin to take chances with not having the floor balanced. But just by nature of the fact that they want to play with good pace offensively could still mean it gets ramped up enough that MSU is able to get more transition opportunities, certainly than we're used to seeing in a Michigan State-Wisconsin game. Because historically, for the last generation or so, there haven't been many of those.
Yeah.
So, decent production. I'm not saying it needs to look like the 22 they had against Illinois. But, if you get 12, 14, I think that's a big plus in this game for Michigan State.
All right. So one of the interesting things too about this game is, with Jeremy Fears playing 42.5 minutes in the Illinois game, we know that Divine Ukachukwu now is out for the season with a broken foot. Had surgery. I think he had surgery this week sometime, had a metatarsal fracture. We're going to see more of not Doug Wojcik. We'll see plenty of him on the sideline, and Denim Wojcik on the court playing. And so it's going to be a matter of just stealing minutes for him throughout the rest of the remainder of the season, probably, unless something really strange starts happening. How is this rotation going to look? This is the kind of game. Do you think the strategy is going to be just playing Jeremy 34, 35 minutes from here on out? Or do you think it's going to be just totally dependent on the game situation? If you can squeeze more minutes out of him, you do, or if you can save minutes.
It's a really good question. And I don't think anybody can confidently say they have the definitive answer to it yet. I don't think the Illinois game told us much. Denham played 2 minutes, right? And you mentioned Jeremy played all but 3 in an overtime game. I will say this much. I don't think that's what we're going to see night after night after night. I think they've got to be very careful because the concern is not what playing Jeremy 35, 36 minutes in any individual game will do. Although we have seen games this year, even when Divine was available, where that happened and where you saw Jeremy kind of wear down late in games. So we've seen what it looks like. Now, he was great down the stretch against Illinois, so it's not a guarantee that it happens that way, but we've seen what it looks like. The bigger concern to me, though, is this is a team that's playing for March, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to think that there's reason to be concerned about what the accumulation of minutes might look like if it's game after game after game by the time you get to March. We talked about it last year. I thought, and this is with Purdue, a team that doesn't play nearly as fast as Michigan State does, but I felt last year down the stretch, Braden Smith, late in games, was showing some wear. Now, he managed to recover and play pretty well in the tournament, but that's the worry. That, to me, is the big worry. It's not in any individual game, is Jeremy going to kick the ball away in the last 2 minutes because he's run out of gas? That could happen. We've seen it happen. But that's not my big worry. My big worry is he's exhausted in a second-round tournament game in the middle of March.
Right.
So what do you do? Because on the flip side of it, you're in a position where you got to try to win games.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Big Ten title's still there, Yeah.
It's still there. And beyond that, it's, you're trying to get yourself better. So you're peaking at the right time. You're trying to do as much as you can within reason to protect a good seed line. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I don't pretend to know the answer. I don't think anybody claiming they do, I think is full of shit. They don't know. Yeah. I do think we're going to see Michigan State try to do as much as they can with massaging the minutes. And so by that, what do I mean? I mean things like picking your spot to get Denham in, so you're minimizing the amount of playing time he's actually out there while maximizing the amount of actual minutes that Jeremy gets to rest. That means you're trying to pick your spot relative to when a TV timeout is coming.
Right.
I do think we will see them try to do that. I think generally this year they've tried to do that with those minutes. But I think we're really going to see an effort to try to do some of that. People have talked about, might this be a time to try to play some different guys in a way that they haven't to date in this season. I've seen people ask, well, can Jordan Scott handle it for a 2-minute stretch? What about Trey Ford? I'm skeptical of that, mainly because I think with anybody who could play that role, theoretically, that's putting more on their plate than they've already got enough on their plates, right? They're asking a lot of Jordan Scott as a starter, as kind of a perimeter defensive stopper, and as a scorer and a starter now. Do you really want to add that to the equation? I don't know that you do. Trey Fort, I think you're hoping. We talked about Jeff Kohler, like they want to try as best they can to get him to a point where he can help this team meaningfully in March. Is adding that to his plate? I kind of question that. So we really do have an issue there. I don't know that but I can't rule it out. Might they decide, what, we can manage this for 2 minutes? Maybe.
Yeah.
I tend to think, based on years and years and years and years and years of watching Tom Izzo, and specifically watching him this year with this group of players, Occam's razor suggests they're going to play Denham Wojcik.
Yep.
And they're probably, how many playing time minutes it amounts to is probably going to be variable, in part because of how effectively they're able to combine it with automatic stoppages of play.
Exactly. And how long it goes beyond the 12 minutes, right? It goes maybe 9 minutes. You have a 3-minute stretch with no whistles, and then you play more minutes, right?
And so there's two caveats to that. One is what you just mentioned. Game situations could stretch that longer than you anticipate. The other would be, and we don't even want to think about this at this stage, foul trouble.
Yeah, right.
Now, Jeremy's generally done a pretty damn good job. I think there's maybe been a couple games this year where he's had first half foul trouble. Not many. He's got to keep that intact.
Yeah, he's just got to be careful. Yeah.
It's tough because he's an aggressive defensive player. You don't want to take away from that. And, offensively, he's aggressive too. You can't take away from him what makes him the player he is, but his presence on the floor is critical. So you're walking a line there. It's a challenge, let's not make any bones about it. I reiterate, though, just for the record, with the Denham Wojcik minutes, my concern is not the offensive end. I know people flip out over that stuff. I have not done a deep dive. I wish somebody would, to see what Michigan State's efficiency rating is offensively, the minutes he's out there, because I suspect it's actually not bad. That's my anecdotal impression of how it's gone offensively. I'm not saying it's perfect, but there have not been many times, especially since Big Ten play started, where Denham's been in the game and the offense has gone like 5 possessions without scoring while he's out
not
there.
A turnover machine, right?
No.
He's not turned the ball over a bunch, which is
And
one
he's
thing to really worry about.
Here's the thing, which he doesn't get credit for. He's actually able to penetrate pretty effectively.
Yeah, no, he is. Yeah.
And that does create, even if the opponent doesn't respect him as a shooter or a scorer, that does create opportunities because defenders can't switch off automatically when a guy's getting into the lane. There's a natural reaction to step to it, right? Yep. It creates opportunities. I don't think the offensive end has been a disaster. What I worry about is defense. And I made this point, I think, on the Spartan Mag board. I think the biggest reason why you did not see him play more minutes in that Illinois game was Illinois' offense is predicated on matchup exploitation.
Right. Yeah.
They are going to run you through picks and keep moving the ball and moving men until they get a matchup they like. And I think, I don't know this, but I suspect that Michigan State figured if he's out there for too long, they're going to get Wagler isolated on him, and that will get Wagler going. Remember, they had Wagler in a hole for most of that game, and they didn't want to do anything to change that. And sometimes all it takes is a layup.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that was the biggest risk. It wasn't the offensive end, it was the defensive end. Now, that's not a situation that comes up in every game you play. This game, for example, kind of depends. Nick Boyd is a very good player and certainly a guy capable of doing damage inside the arc, as we've talked about, but he's not a physical mismatch. There will be minutes when Nick Boyd's not out there and Wisconsin, by necessity, is bigger on the perimeter. Those minutes might be a problem for Denham.
Yeah.
But we're just going to have to see. I mean, I think we know he's going to play. The question is how many game minutes it is, how effectively they're able to manage it all. And Jeremy's got to stay out of foul trouble.
I think, an important aspect of this too, that, it became more apparent to me, especially with the game against Illinois, is the role that Jordan Scott plays in this sort of answering this question, not as a guy who's going to be playing point, but his defensive versatility, his ability to guard guards will allow two things. One is, I think, if when Jeremy's out there, he can sometimes guard the tougher guard, and Jeremy can take it easy. Let's say maybe like the last game he's guarding Davis a lot of times, just kind of take up some of the load off of him having to guard, work quite as hard on defense. But also, I think, when you have Denham Wojcik out there, you can hide Wojcik in a little bit too if you've got Scott out there. Now, Wojcik played a lot of times with opposite Divine, and so it's not like he didn't have a great defender. But I do think Scott just offers a little bit more resistance when it comes to the perimeter than Divine did.
Really depends on the matchup.
Yeah.
Jordan Scott, this is a game where I honestly don't see problems for him, for Jordan. Wisconsin's guards, Boyd and Blackwell are, they're good 3-level scorers, but they're not bruisers in the post that I think will just physically give Jordan difficulty the way that, say, Reynolds did for Minnesota.
Sure.
But it's just matchup dependent. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up there. We'll be back, of course, live after the game, which is going to be 10:30-ish. It's a Fox game, so it'll go long, I'm sure, almost for certain. So we'll see you then. Make sure you head on over to our support page at the Final Four, theschedule.com/support to get a hold of all our great sponsors. And you can check out our Slido poll. You can do that either at slido.com at #TIFFNOTS, or you can go over to nudgeprinting.com/win, where there should be a link, an embed link to vote in the player of the game. And also, of course, enter that great drawing. So until next time, the Final Four is not the schedule. Go green.